8. The Heirophant. I have feelings for a guy, Grandpa, said Kain. Then you're out of the family, said Grandpa Raphael's picture. I don't have a grandson anymore, and if I see you on the street, I will pretend not to know you. And why do you think Grandpa Raphael won't approve of your relationship? Asked Jeremy's plushie. Kain had fallen asleep while hugging the plushie. He made me feel rather foolish after I gave Malik that love letter. And it was not as if I was physically attracted to Malik. I was just jealous that he was spending more time with Karina than with me. I did my research about what to expect about sleeping with a guy, and no one had done anything to have Malik's undivided attention. And he was my first friend, and back then I was lonely. I was so very lonely, said Kain before falling into a deeper slumber. A week passed after this incident, and during that time Kain's feelings for Oberon festered like an infectious disease. And try as he might, he couldn't suppress the longing he felt for that man. And as for Oberon, his love for Kain grew stronger, and since he couldn't have Kain, Oberon decided to use Arden as a poor substitute. It was the last day of January, and Kain had gotten used to his new situation. He went on patrol, and he would type up his reports from his car laptop to avoid his co-workers. And during lunch break, he would dine with Alexia, and the magazine he wrote for had an office close to Kain's new job. And during that time, he would make political cartoons for his friend. Since he avoided his co-workers like the plague, Kain was quickly getting the reputation of being a lone wolf, and his co-workers naturally felt that they couldn't rely on him. And like every day, Kain went on patrol to wait for crime to happen in his general vicinity, and his walkie-talkie received a distress call. One of his peers needed backup, and he drove to the address, and even from a block away he could hear the bullet storm. He double-checked his bulletproof helmet and vest, and he examined his revolver to make certain that it was in working order, and after checking his gear, he got out of the car. He saw the shooter hold up in his home, and whenever the arresting officer tried to get close, he would get shot at with a machine gun. Kain took careful aim, and then he shot a single bullet. The bullet then blew off the finger and the thumb of the criminal, and when the criminal doubled over in pain, he took aim and he shot both shoulders just to be safe. And his Vietnam War veteran grandpa had taught Kain where to shoot to render the entire arm useless. He lingered a little to see if the arresting officer needed more help, and when he saw more cop cars arriving, he returned to his patrol car. There was no need for him to stay since he wasn't the arresting officer. Only the arresting officer needed to write reports and do actual police work. Plus, it was almost lost time, and he didn't want to miss his lunch date with Alexia. He drove to the police station to clock out at exactly 11. Wait, said one of his co-workers. The boss wants to talk with you. And he will, after I come back from my union-mandated lunch break, hissed Kain. And why must you bring unions into this? Asked the co-worker, laughing. Kain didn't answer. He simply ran to his patrol car to get away from the situation. If asked why he didn't come right away, he would pretend not to have heard the message. Because his co-worker didn't speak loud enough. No, that wasn't a good lie. His co-worker didn't deliver the message. Rather, he poked fun at him of getting bit by a wannabe vampire, or had asked at some point or another about the curious incident, as they like to call it. Each time they asked him insensitive questions, Kain grew to dislike them even more, and he no longer bothered to remember their names or their faces. If one of them greeted him outside of work, he treated them like the strangers that they were. He erased from his mind those strangers while he struggled to earn his daily bread, and he fancied that there wouldn't be so much crime if the fool spent less time in idle gossip. And he parked in the usual place while walking up to a nearby beach camping area, and Alexa was sitting by the side on top of a tower with his lunchbox, and he giggled when he saw his friend approaching. "Kain, what's up?" said Alexia. "What's up?" said Kain in an exaggerated tone. "In all seriousness, what is up with you?" asked Alexia. "I'm fine," said Kain, opening his lunchbox to munch of his egg salad. "You don't look fine," said Alexia. "I hate my co-worker, that's what's up. But you get used to it. It is amazing what you can get used to. It feels like middle school all over again," said Kain, rubbing his temple. "And just talking about it was giving him a headache. And you would think that those bastards would have matured after getting a badge and a gun, but no. They all act like a bunch of toddlers with their stupid questions, and then they wonder why I avoid them like the plague. They're just curious about you, Kain, mused Alexia. They are not curious about me. They are curious about the vampire that attacked me, barked Kain bitterly. They don't care that I suffer as long as they quench their stupid curiosity. Maybe they want to help, said Alexia before taking a bite from his tuna sandwich. They are not the lead investigators, so their interrogations are only self-serving, barked Kain. Well, maybe they're investigating the matter on their own, mused Alexia before taking another bite. Why are you playing devil's advocate, Alexia? Asked Kain. I just don't like to see you so angry all the time, said Alexia, and being armed and angry doesn't usually end well. I suppose, said Kain, removing the bullets from his revolver, and he asked, giving a fake smile, do you feel safer? That wasn't what I was worried about, said Alexia. If I could find anything that paid the same and that came with health insurance, I would leave this job without a moment's hesitation, said Kain, finally voicing his desire to quit the force. And maybe you could try your luck in another department, suggested Alexia. I am already in a new department. A new place will be more of the same. At least I know what to expect from them. Más vale mal conocido que bueno por conocer, said Kain. The alarm on his cell phone began to ring, and he needed to get back to work. And he just needed to make it through the second half of the day. In just 4 hours, Friday would. In just 4 hours, he could continue with his life. He arrived at the station with 10 minutes still left on his lunch break, and he waited 5 more minutes before entering within. And he crashed when he heard someone asking about him, and all he needed was to clock in to be able to return to his patrol car. And a nearby officer laughed when he saw Kain sneaking about, and he was almost there, just a few more steps, and he would be able to clock in. And he looked at the clock with the corner of his eyes, and he only had 30 seconds to make it to the machine. And he sprinted the rest of the way, and he clocked in at 12, not a second earlier, not a second later. And his happiness was short-lived when his co-workers started clapping and hooting. If you're done fooling about, the boss wanted to speak with you, said an unfamiliar face. Yes, sir, said Kain, making his way to his boss's office. His eyes immediately turned glassy as soon as he opened the door, and the man gestured for Kain to sit down, and Kain saw the man's lips moving, but he heard nothing. He had completely detached himself from the situation. To occupy his mind, he focused on a new visual novel game he was playing. In that game, he was a lawyer, and he was stuck in a witness testimony. And try as he might, he couldn't find a contradiction, and he fancied that maybe he should look up an online guide, but the gamer in him wanted to win it without help. And whenever the man stopped talking, Kain would respond by saying, yes, sir. And at a certain point, his boss noticed that Kain wasn't paying attention, and the man sighed with frustration. He wasn't used to dealing with such a sick-headed individual. If that is all, I will return to my patrol route, said Kain. A computer came in today and it belongs to a criminal, and we need you to work your hacker magic on it to help us retrieve the incriminating information, said the boss, finally returning to the work-related subject. And the files we are looking for are loot, so you will know it when you find it. Yes, sir, said Kain, standing up. The computer's in the forensics lab, said his boss. Yes, sir, said Kain, opening the door. And Kain wandered about the station searching for a room labeled forensics lab. And he should have asked for direction, but he wanted to avoid human contact as much as possible. Are you looking for the bathroom? Asked a familiar voice. And looking up for a second, Kain saw that it was Arden. Kain said dryly, I'm busy. Busy being lost, mused Arden. And he had seen Kain pass by his office twice. I would sooner put a bullet through my vein than get help from you, said Kain. He walked past Arden to resume his wandering, and after an hour not finding the location, Kain finally said grudgingly, where is the forensics lab? It is in room 208, second floor to the right, said Arden. Thank you for your assistance, said Kain coldly. It is the least I could do after you saved me from that sticky situation, said Arden. He had been the cop that had called for backup, and he was also happy that Kain hadn't told anyone that he preferred the company of men. Kain said nothing, and he was doing his job, and there was no need to be thanked for doing what he was being paid to do. This is at least what he thought, and he was in too much of a foul mood to accept any pleasantries. He found the forensics lab, and waiting for him was the charred laptop. The pair had burned it in a foolish attempt to burn the evidence. Kain hacked the laptop to pieces. The analyst said, you were supposed to hack it, not hack it to pieces. I can't do anything with a burned laptop, and I need to salvage whatever pieces still work, explained Kain. He dug up what remained of the memory chips and must have fried, but there were a few intact. And he said to the other analyst, I need a new laptop, preferably one that it has all of its parts. There is one that's no longer needed. No, this is one. This is one that's no longer needed, said the analyst, bringing out a different laptop. I need a Windows laptop, said Kain. Well, we don't have one available, said the analyst. And what about that one, said Kain, pointing to the analyst's laptop. It's mine, he protested. Is anyone using this old computer, said Kain, pointing to the office computer that was turned off. No, said the analyst, but I don't think you are. Kain opened the computer and he attached the memory chips into the old Windows computer. And now that the hardware was installed, he needed to see if this cannibalization had worked. He turned on the computer and he found when he saw that the computer wasn't reading the chip. And while the PC was on, he jabbed the chip with his screwdriver, and after some minor twitching, a sound manifested in the desktop, and after opening it, he realized that this was the information that his boss wanted. He took a photo of the file of the laptop and he wrote down all of the steps. And he smiled when he saw that the workday was almost finally over, and he fiddled with the computer for a bit in order to pretend to work for another hour. And once it was almost 4, he finally reported that he had concluded the task he had been given. I concluded the task you gave me, said Kain, entering his boss's office, and he handed a floppy disk to his boss before adding, and here's a copy of the data stored in the PC just to be safe. Did you look at it? Asked his boss. I was in order to look at the so-called evidence, said Kain. Then how do you know that this is the information we seek? Asked the boss. This is all I was able to salvage from the computer. Whether it is what you're looking for, that remains to be seen. In any case, it isn't. In case it isn't, I did a system restore on the chip and did summon back whatever old data was deleted. And the system restore data is on the CD, and do with it what you will, said Kain, and he added, It's 4, have a good weekend. Kain, can we have a serious conversation for a second? Asked his boss. Will you pay me for the second of my life that you plan to waste? Asked Kain bitterly. And what the hell is your problem? Said his boss, smacking the table with both his hands. You are the chief of police, and you must have solved a few crimes back in the day. And why don't you figure out what my problem is? Said Kain coldly. Is Arden bothering you because you're gay? Asked the chief of police, and he always saw Kain looking extra irritated whenever he spoke with Arden. And Kain laughed bitterly, and he found it laughable that one didn't need to sleep with a man to be branded as gay. And his reputation had followed him to a new job, and his mouth sadly was thinking about Overton. And this was what his life was like wherever he went. If you're done asking stupid questions, I will be on my way, said Kain. I have another question, insisted the chief of police, and he brought out from his pocket $20, and he added, for your patience. Kain eyed the money with suspicion, and in the end he chose not to take it, and he fancied that this was a test to see if it could be bought, and for all he knew this was a trap, and he was going to get recorded as setting a bride, and that the chief would hold a piece of evidence over him like a sword of Damocles. And Kain started off with his while glaring at the chief. Why do you have to make things so difficult? Asked the chief, sighing wearily. You chose the difficult path to tread, not I, said Kain coldly before finally leaving the office. And he clocked out, and he had survived the first 2 weeks. He got paid today, and it was a direct deposit, so he could see his money right away. And he checked his account over the phone, and he frowned when he saw that no money had been deposited. He saw Arden walking over to his car, and he came over to ask the pertinent question. Today is payday, and at what time do they usually send the money? Asked Kain. Do you have some outstanding bills to pay? Asked Arden, raising an eyebrow. And I can lend you a bit of money if you like. After all, I do owe you for helping me out of that scrape. Just answer the question, insisted Kain. It usually clears up around 5, said Arden. Kain returned to the police station and sat down before the Human Resource office to wait for his check to clear. If it didn't, he was going to ask Eugenia to lend him one of her lawyers, and they were all going to rue the day that they decided to stiff Kain Sanson. And while he waited, he tapped his fingers nervously on the nearby table, and the officer from the night shift nervously eyed the unfamiliar face. And Kain had the look of a man who was waiting for the right opportunity to commit murder. The check is late. It is 5 minutes late. These thieving bastards have ruined me, thought Kain. And he breathed in it out while he fought the urge to make a scene. And he removed his grandpa's revolver from his holster before staring at it. And then he looked at the Human Resource Office before staring at the clock again. And Arthur went into the Human Resource Office to speak to the teller. And the woman had sent the check, and if there was a delay in the reporting, it was the bank's fault, not hers. And Arthur opened the door, and he beckoned Kain to come within, and the woman showed the computer information, and she assured the grumpy, psychotic-looking Kain that it wasn't her fault that his bank sucked. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. Bye-bye, and God bless.